As a custodian, you may prefer netting. As a executing broker, you may prefer clearing, and you overlay that. The ability to oversee the different journeys and govern them and optimize to the network. But you can never do it as a single firm. You have to do it in tandem with the other side. Yes. That coordination is fundamental for a network to provide. Very excited to be on the next episode of The Network Effect and sharing the sofa with Naveen TV, who has recently joined our executive team as the Global Head of Product. Naveen, you've joined us from JP Morgan after a career of a couple of decades on the sell side. Not a trivial step to decide to go to a tech company. Can you share a little bit about the background of the decision-making process and how it led you to this decision?
Sure. I think I spent about 8 years at Goldman Sachs working across equities, fixed income, prime brokerage, variety of roles across middle office, client onboarding, OCRM, and then 12 years at JP Morgan, where 2 years in prime brokerage and then 10 years in security services across both operations and also on the product side, especially running all the data products across custody, fund administration, middle office, which sometimes I refer to as the dark side of the industry because people don't know enough about it, but I think they're such an integral part of the ecosystem. It's important to understand how that part of the industry works and how we bring them on the journey. I think I've been very fortunate to have great roles, great teams, great companies to work with. And I'm sure in some small part I've created in both places something that hopefully will stay and live on for its own future. But I think the opportunity sometimes, in this industry, there's very few times you get opportunities where you can sit and create something that can last in a way that creates its own legacy, its own mold in the market, that you end up reshaping the future for a long time. And you don't get that sort of opportunities in your career very often. I think coming into AccessFintech, I felt I was in that time in my life where I could potentially take an opportunity where we could collectively, as a team here in this company, help change this industry, change the legacy, or change the future, or change how the industry operates, change how the industry collaborates. Data has become such an important aspect in our industry. AI is becoming more and more front and center in the future. Without the data, you can't really do AI. And without the network, you don't have the data. So they all sort of come together. I think we are placed in a very good place from that perspective to be able to help change that and help our clients along the way. So that's what excited me.
It's amazing. There's two things. First of all, building a company, which is an exciting roller coaster in itself, the vision and the energy that you brought in even got me excited. And I'm naturally excitable because I've been doing this for a career. But the injection of energy and focus has been fantastic and put me in a place that I could see a even more broader horizon, a broader opportunity with AccessFintech.
Yeah.
One of the first things you've done in joining is looking at the branding and picking that brand called Synergy and putting it front and center.
Yeah.
Maybe a few words and background on that brand of Synergy.
For me, it's all about a story. I think facts are important, but people relate to and connect to a story, right? And when I look at our story, our journey, and what we are trying to do in the industry, synergy is very synonymous to what we're doing. If you literally look at the dictionary meaning, it is two or more organizations creating a combined effect, which is much greater than the sum of their individual effects, right? And if you look at what we're doing, that's exactly what we're trying to do in this industry. So for me, synergy really stands for what we're doing in the industry, right? That's one. Second, I think when we look and sit as to what are we trying to do, what are we, right? The three words that came together, which we made that into our now sort of our statement, is synergy is the network that is driven by data and intelligence, right? And we can talk about each of those three, what those three mean. But for a network that uses data and powered by AI and insights that can help the whole industry, that's very synonymous to synergy, right? And synergy as a platform can be catered to the securities market, to the derivatives market, to the alternatives market, to the payments market, right? So there is a variety of use cases that we can apply to, but the foundation of it being a network that's driven by data and intelligence doesn't change. And you use that same foundation and see how you can help change the securities industry, how you change the derivatives industry, how you change the alternatives industry, how you change the payments industry. Now, each of those solutions might be slightly different depending on where that market is, what clients are looking for, also what the maturity of that respective industry is. But the foundation doesn't change. That's always exciting, right? You always have to have a strong foundation on which then you can build other products. And that's what gets me excited. And hopefully our clients will also get excited on this journey with us as to how synergy can help achieve their goals.
Yeah. And the journey for the company is interesting because with the history of what we've done and what I've done in previous places, you often build a technology and sell a technology. And here we've built a technology on which there is a network, on which there is data. And then the whole distribution model takes a slightly different pace and a slightly different cadence. It takes time to build tech. It takes longer to build a network. It's very exciting to be at a place where you can finally harvest the value that's being created by them. Let's talk about the three components that make up the value proposition of AccessFintech. We talk about network, data, and intelligence, and unpack those a little bit.
Sure. And I think, like I said before, if you look at the end goal everybody's trying to do, right? You want to get to a place where, like, your intelligence or your AI-based insights is driving your workflow so much more efficiently. On one side, it could be generating new alpha, getting new opportunities that you wouldn't have been able to do without AI, or making your plant so much efficient that your costs significantly reduce, right? You can use that for both. But to do that, you need data. To get the data, you need the network, right? What sometimes people are trying to do is they're trying to skip the first two steps and directly going, how can AI help, right? Because the first two steps are hard. Building a network is hard. Harvesting data is hard, right? I'm not saying AI is easy, but those two are a lot harder and foundational work you have to do before your AI can become meaningful, right? So if you start with network, I think in Synergy, we've done a fantastic job in how much we have matured the network. It's one, how complete is the network and how deep is the network, right? For me, like both of them make a big difference. And I'm very proud to say that I think Synergy has one of the most deepest network of ecosystem that is potentially out there. I don't think it can compare to anything out there right now, at least in the industry, right? From a completeness perspective, we have all the different aspects of buy sides, whether that's a hedge fund, an asset manager, an asset owner, an insurance company, a pension fund, a government or a sovereign wealth fund. We have all aspects of buy sides. People tend to focus on one or the other, but we have all aspects of buy sides. We have all aspects of sell sides, whether it's broker-dealers across asset classes, equities, fixed income, derivatives, alternatives, loans, prime brokers, asset servicers. Again, I think we have done a lot of work in making sure that we bring asset servicers on the journey. Pretty much all the global custodians. We have the sub-custodians. We're going into ICSTs and CSTs now. We have outsourced middle offices. Fund administrators, I think we have more work to do. I think there is more opportunities we can do with the data we have. We can fundamentally change and give more better data into the NAV process, whether it's on the traditional side or on the alt side. So I think but we have them as part of the network. We're also looking at order management systems that our buy sides use and other tech platforms through partnerships. So it's a full, complete part of the ecosystem when you look at the ecosystem, right? And from how deep is it? We have over 250 live members of the network right now, right? These are not POCs. These are not, just testing. But these are live members that are either providing data or consuming data on a day-to-day basis, right? That gives us an opportunity to then what other things that we can do, like how much data can we harvest? How much insights can we generate? Because your insights is only as good as your network and data. Now that we have the deep, expansive network, and also across asset classes, right? Because most companies tend to focus on one asset class, especially in the fintech space. I think we have had the opportunity and luxury to be able to do this cross asset classes, which starts to position us truly as a post-trade horizontal across all asset classes.
It's one of the interesting evolutions of the network is it's not just about data being contributed, it's about correlated data. The transaction starts with the buy side and executed and then cleared or primed or custodied, and then there's a local agent and you go to different markets. The number of touch points that are relevant for a transaction, which make our ecosystem robust but also complicated, create the opportunities. So the looking at the network from beginning to end is very powerful. And I'll go back to the early days of the company when you were still my client. And you were saying, don't forget security services and don't forget custody, and it's not the same thing.
Yep.
And it took a while for the penny to drop to understand how complicated our ecosystem, even being in this industry for many years, you still don't see the end-to-end impact of what happens when you hand over the data from one point to the other. So yeah, it's very interesting to see the insights that come out of this intelligence. Okay, so if we go through the phases of evolution of building a network and then being able to consume data, there's a significant difference between raw data and I don't want to go as extreme as going to clean data, but correlated data, intelligent data, usable data, which ends up being a big responsibility of the network. Let's talk a little bit about what is the network's role in actually processing and consuming data and what makes a good data network.
I think there's two sides to that, right? One is adoption. How quickly is it for me to either provide data to this network or consume data to this network? And once I give data to this network, will it just stay in its raw form like a data lake, or is something happening with that data, right? Both are relevant. So let's talk about the adoption first. If you look at the adoption, I think we have a unique position in the sense, yes, we have data quality standards. Yes, we look at the data quality of anything. Yes, we have minimum data required based on what business function you're trying to do with that. But what we are not doing is enforcing a certain data dictionary or a data model on our publishers or consumers, right? Because that can become very time consuming because most of our clients have multiple systems. The data is not even coming from one system within that organization. And each system will call that something differently, right? In my career, and I'm sure you have too, I've been on calls where people will argue as to what one field could be called for hours and still not agree with it, right? They'll say, we'll agree to disagree, and they'll end the call, right? So I think what we have made it is we have made the adoption easy, right? So you call it whatever you want to call it, but we will transform it, right? To give, I think, numbers perspective, we have mapped over 200,000 fields across the industry, across asset classes, right? That's a lot of fields, 200,000 fields. Like you could look at any one particular trade, you don't have that many fields, but that's how many fields we have mapped to. If you look at the connectivity wise, we have over 600 APIs with that 250 members of the network, right? Because on an average, a member can have 3 or 4 APIs. And again, I'm using the word API loosely. It could be API, it could be MQ, it could be, SFTP, it could be now Kafka and Snowflake. It could be any of those. But all of those becomes quick to adoption, anybody who wants to adopt, but the maintenance of that data as well. Because again, through my career, I can tell once you build an API, maintaining that is a lot harder too. Because anybody can, on any day, change something, change a data attribute, change their API mechanism, change their connectivity protocols. So you have to ongoing maintain. But what we're doing is we're maintaining those 600 APIs for everybody in the network. So if one API, one data dictionary changes on that API, none of the others feel the difference, right? So you get the quick to adoption plus maintenance free, right? Now, why are they giving us all this data? Are we changing? Are we enriching? Are we making sense of the data? If I take even as old as it is, we spend a lot of time on just settlement in the market, right? Especially as markets are going from T+2 to T+1 and eventually to T0, your window is reducing. So it's brought a new focus on settlement as a function. How can it be faster, cheaper, efficient, better, right? The age-old method has been send an instruction to the market. A broker sends an instruction to the market through their sub-custodian. A global custodian sends an instruction through the sub-custodian, and the CSDs match, and then they send the results back. But the buy side is at the mercy of receiving from them because buy side is not there directly connecting to the CSD, right? But sometimes you can end up in this Chinese whisper scenario because it has to go through so many layers before the buy side gets or any party knows. And all you would get in the market is either matched or unmatched, which is great if you had 3 days in time, but now you have 1 day in time. Even if 80% matched on trade date or 90% matched on trade date, the 10% can become a lot in that crunched time, right? What we're doing in Synergy is we're taking that 10% or 15%, whatever that is, and we're saying it's not just unmatched. We've created our own categories. We've said we'll call it mismatched, and we'll show you one side has a cash difference, the other side has a quantity difference, the other one has a place of settlement difference. So we're not just telling you it's unmatched, we're actually telling you it's everything but one field or two fields are unmatched, and why exactly they're unmatched. So go correct the cash or go correct the quantity, then it will be matched. Or we've created another category which is called pre-match, which is this will match in the market eventually. There's a timing issue, but both sides have the same details. It will match, so you don't have to worry about that, right? So we're helping people parse through their data and getting to the exact exception they need to look at and what is the reason they need to look at that exception. But we're not stopping there either, right? You mentioned something before about how they collaborate on that data, right? So now there is a cash difference. What happens? Today's world, without Synergy, they have to do emails, phone calls, emails between multiple parties. Why is there this cash difference? Who's going to amend it, right? Those emails don't tie back to that transaction. Eventually, somebody will amend, it'll settle. But now I have a claim. Claim can take 30 days to create the claim. Now you're going back 30 days. Let me get all those emails. Who was the party at fault? How did I amend? Who amended? Who needs to pay this claim, right? We're trying to cut all of those out and say, you know what? Collaborate on that data exception, right? Again, through APIs or through our UI or whatever mechanism possible on that exception at transaction level. Collaborate who needs to change. Now, one, you remove the emails. You're collaborating with all the trade details. And second, if there is a claim, you have all the audit trail in one place. You don't have to go scour those emails, right? So it's quicker adoption. They're getting enriched data back, and they're able to collaborate in reducing emails and phone calls and spreadsheets and all of those, right? I think that's where also I think people are starting to see the value of Synergy and why they should come to Synergy, because it's no longer a question of build versus buy, right? Even if they build their own or the buy a vendor product, doesn't matter for us. We're just powering that through Synergy and making that system that much better through meaningful, enriched, exception-based data.
Let's move to the third component. So we spoke about the importance of the network, 250 participants. We talk about the importance of data as a building block, and we talk about the tens of millions of transactions and the 2 billion events a day that are happening. But there's always a so what moment. Okay, so you have all this data, so what? And that comes the intelligence. Let's unpack the intelligence conversation a little bit and actually answer that question. So what about all this data?
Sure. I think, like I said before, intelligence has two aspects, right? When it comes to AI, is are we generating more alpha, or are we making it more efficient through the data, right? If I take any data that we're taking securities, we're taking derivatives, we're taking alternatives, all of these have real, actual applications of AI now, right? With the way the models have developed now, and with what OpenAI did with ChatGPT and tons of other LLM models that are out there now, the models are all the same models. Everybody has access to all the models pretty much, especially if you go to a cloud platform, we all sort of have the same level playing field, right? But the difference is, how much data do you have to apply that model on, and how exactly are you implementing it? That's what it comes down to, right? With reference to data, we talked about that, right? We have anywhere 75 to 90% of global trade volume from a securities perspective. Now, every bank can do their own LLM, but they don't have that entire industry network of data, right? Plus, we have all the events that happen with a particular trade across the network, right? What did the buy side do with the transaction? What did the custodian do? What did the sub-custodian do? What did the CSD do? What did the broker-dealer do, right? We know all the actors of that transaction and who did where, when, what, at what time, right? Again, one particular entity or a bank or a buy side won't have all the parties. They probably know what they have done, but they don't know what everybody did. All of that matters when it comes to an LLM model trying to figure out who did where, when, what. Now, if I take all of that and if we start applying it, and if I take the simple example we were talking before of there's a cash difference between the custodian and the broker, right? Ultimately, the buy side has to be part of the discussion before we figure out who needs to amend the cash. But what we can do now is we can take that cash difference and one, identify that there is a cash difference, real time on trade date, not wait until much later through emails and phone calls. Through our data, through Synergy, we can come down to that. But at the same time, we can say, who has usually amended the cash in the past for this type of security, this type of market, these counterparties involved? Is it the broker? Is it the custodian? Is it the buy side? Is it usually the commission that's been wrong? Or is it the fees that was calculated wrong? What exactly was the driver and who did? Not just on a scorecard or post-report monthly, quarterly basis, but real time at a transaction level that can be integrated to your workflow, right? That's real. So that's not something you're using that as a side or as a proof of concept or as a nice to have toy. You're changing your workflow. You're changing how you're driving your workflow on a day-to-day basis with your users. That's meaningful, right?
Thanks, Naveen. As we talk about the aggregation of network participants and data, what type of value buckets are being generated by this that are useful for the client base that we're discussing?
Sure. I think it's different by each of the asset classes. If I look at securities, I think we have touched enough on matching and settlement. But I think connecting all the different parties to a transaction, I think that's adding more value to our clients now. So they can see real time who has where, what at any given point of time, and who needs to take action. That's changing. If you think from, everybody has a client, right? For the sub-custodians, global custodians are the client. For global custodians, the buy sides are the client. For broker-dealers, buy side is the client. The buy side might have asset owners as a client. So everybody is in the game of client servicing, right? So that same transaction, same question might be getting a client service email inquiry in some form 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, right? What we're trying to do is, for all of them, publishing that data real time, we're helping everybody become efficient in client servicing, right? Not just with the buy sides, but for everybody's client, give real-time data, give real-time matching, give real-time collaboration. So you eliminate emails, you become proactive with client, whoever your client is, become proactive with your client and reduce the reactive incoming inquiries, right? That changes how people have thought of client servicing, right? People think of client servicing as how do we make it self-service? And self-service sometimes can be looked at as a bad connotation, right? Because it just becomes, oh, I don't want to receive this email. But we've changed the game on client servicing. It's not about self-service. It's not about just reducing emails. Yes, that's the end goal. But how you do it is through real-time transparency into data. So the client servicing changes. I also talked about when network data intelligence comes together, one is we make it more efficient. But second, you create new opportunities that didn't exist before. Right? What do I mean by that? If you look at the fixed income world, whether it's repos or mortgage products such as TBAs, where most of it doesn't really settle, it's paired off or netted ahead of the settlement date, right? Because it's really used as a financing instrument in the market. It's used as a treasury funding flow. But the workflow of pairing off or netting is still 100% manual without Synergy, right? Like people have to communicate through email spreadsheets, instruction to custodian still via faxes. If people don't know, fax was invented in the 1800s, not 1900s or 2000, in the 1800s, right? So the fact that we still use, 200 years old technology to settle or net a repo is just mind-blowing for me, right? Whereas through Synergy, we can give people potential opportunities to either net trades, pair off trades, clear trades, agree that workflow in an automated fashion, again through API or on UI, and instruct your custodian, all electronically, right? One, it eliminates your email paper. But again, as from a treasury funding perspective, it's giving you extra time now. You don't have to pad hours in manual workflows. You can wait probably a lot longer before you decide which way you want to go ahead with your funding requirements because you're now doing it more electronically, right? But this concept of, if you look at this matching, pairing, netting, exists in all industries. If you take derivatives, I think derivatives has been so much focus since the early 2000s in automating the confirmation process in derivatives. But sort of everybody forgot what happens after. There's so many lifecycle events derivatives generate. We've all sort of left that on the side. It's all been left again to emails and spreadsheets, right? If you take simple CFD swaps, right, there is some sort of a monthly reset process based on the underlying equities. The buy side and the prime broker has to agree. And then the custodian needs to get, and the fund administrator needs to know the result of that. Again, all spreadsheets and emails, right? Whereas through Synergy, we're taking the data from buy side, from prime brokers, matching those positions, matching those transactions, looking at the reset value, allow people to agree or dispute the reset value real time electronically through APIs, and instruct all the parties such as custodian or fund administrators, right? It's the same concept of network data intelligence. We're just applying to a different use case. If you look at alternatives, right, whether it's loans or private credit, we have started the journey. Same thing. As if being as a custodian, as a fund administrator in the loan space, half the job of the team at month end was chasing the dealers and understanding what the positions were, because we had to independently verify the positions from a fund accountant perspective. That's your fiduciary responsibility. But you're chasing that on emails, right? Whereas through our Synergy, we can give that real-time position transparency. You don't have to chase that through emails and phone calls, right? If you go into private equity real estate space, a lot of the data when it comes to cash flows are still shared on PDFs, right? People have army of people who are just scraping information from PDFs. Whereas we can digitize that and we can share through the network all the parties. Again, same, adopting data, collaborating on data, looking at what the real-time issues are with the data, and letting everybody collaborate to resolve that through our insights. Same concept, right? So hopefully it gives our clients enough insights as to how many opportunities are there. While Synergy is that one network powered by data and intelligence, it can be applied to a variety of use cases across asset classes. So which truly positions us as this post-trade horizontal across all asset classes, right? And we're not shy in building partnerships. We can build interoperability partnerships with any vertical, because each of these asset classes have their own front-to-back verticals. We're not afraid with working them. We'll work with all of them. But we can be that post-trade horizontal that everybody can connect to.
One of the questions we often get asked is the ability to successfully expand across asset classes. And I think a lot of it has got to do with focus. If you focus on data and correlation, rather than understanding necessarily every single event that happens, and you focus on the anomaly that comes through data, you have a real opportunity to be that horizontal play. Mm-hmm. Because your level of expertise goes to detecting and understanding that there's a complicated supply chain, but it's a supply chain problem that happens again and again and again.
Yes.
Like we said before, 5, 6, 7 different parties touching a transaction, contributing in their own step, leads to a complicated workflow. Mm-hmm. When things go wrong, all you have to do is try to recreate that manually. Mm-hmm. Solving that problem is very valuable. We're in a very dynamic regulatory environment. We've just come out of T+1 in the US. Mm-hmm. There's new regulation looming up both in Europe, globally, back in the US. Mm-hmm. Maybe we can talk a little bit about some of those key touch points, and again, reflecting on the pressure that creates on the ecosystem and why Synergy is important to be able to address such changes in the market.
Yeah, if you look at from a Europe perspective, with the T+1 coming in the next couple of years, I think Europe has a little bit more challenges compared to US. US was one market, one currency, one settlement box. Whereas Europe, you have multiple countries with multiple different regulations. A lot of the securities are fungible. They can settle in more than one market, in more than one way, with multiple currencies, right? That creates in its own form of issue as to how do you match real time? How do you know what's matched or not matched on trade day? If it's not, why it's not matched? Where is the position sitting, right? We can map not just the matching, but also real time positions. Where exactly is the position, right? And does the position have to be moved ahead of the settlement, right? It gets even more complicated if you have a pending loan that needs to be recalled, right? And if you're doing an FX on the back of that transaction, which currency at what time. Usually you can't do an FX until it's matched in the trade. You don't want FX exposure. So what happens if it's not matched? How do you know I can do the FX or not? This is where Synergy can really add value to our clients because one, we can do real-time matching across all of Europe markets. Doesn't matter what market the trade is getting instructed. We can even do cross-matching instruction allegement across different markets. So if one party is instructing in France and the other party is instructing in Euroclear, independently, they won't be able to see that. Whereas because through our network, we can actually match a Euroclear versus a French transaction and tell our clients, look, there is a piece at difference. One of you needs to amend. But if you have to amend, we can then map that with the real-time positions from the custodians. Okay, if you do change that, where exactly is the position sitting? Is it in Euroclear or is it in France? Who needs to realign the stock and where? And how do you instruct realignment of that stock, right? And when do you execute the FX and what currency in which market? All of that Synergy can really help. And it can be a one cross-market solution for across Europe as people embark on their T+1 journey. Right? So I strongly do urge our clients to think of that ahead of time. From now, we don't have to wait 2 years for that.
Yeah. And I'll add to that, the T+1 in Europe isn't limited to Europe. You have APAC clients dealing with
Absolutely.
US providers on European equity. It becomes really a global challenge that has to be addressed. I think the market passed T+1 in the US very successfully, and now the momentum will take it into a more complicated scenario. So
absolutely,
we have great value to add there.
I think as people are going past the T+1 in US, the treasury market is taking a bit of difference where there is a new clearing mandate coming in US next year. This one is slightly different. There is now dropped a date, so people can start doing it from now. But there is a date by which everybody has to comply and go into clearing mode. It changes how you do treasuries and how you clear and where you put the margin, how you keep the margin requirement, how you clear. Again, being able to clear, you need to understand where the instruction is. Is it matched? Is it not matched? Because to be able to clear, you need to match the transaction first. If it's not matched, why is it not matched? What is the issue? How do you bring the different counterparties? Who is in different type of clearing? There's different types of clearing, whether it's done with or done away. Like who is on which type of program, right? All of those, again, we can give the transparency through Synergy, showing people what program each of them are in and how they can clear and what is the matching, real-time matching, or if it's not matched, why it's not matched, so they can get the transaction matched through the network collaboration and exception resolution before the clearing happens. So again, I think there is an opportunity for us and our clients to jointly partner and make the treasury clearing that much more easier. It also ties back to the things that we're doing in pair-off, netting. There is potential opportunities of clearing in Europe that we can talk about, right? So I think all of these, sometimes a regulatory brings a change in one area, it forces you to think, but can also open up opportunities in other places where even if it's not regulatory driven, you can still be opportunistic and see, how can I take this and apply it in many places?
Yeah. And the amount of opportunities differ also based on the role and the restrictions that you have. As a custodian, you may prefer netting. As a executing broker, you may prefer clearing, and you overlay that. The ability to oversee the different journeys and govern them and optimize to the network. But you can never do it as a single firm. You have to do it in tandem with the other side. That coordination is fundamental for a network to provide.
I think the benefit of Synergy, you're absolutely hit a nail on the head, right? I think with Synergy, you get the opportunity of everybody might need something slightly different based on how they're set up, based on their own regulatory implications, based on their own compliance requirements, but you don't have to force one size fits all, right? Multiple people can have different operating models or adopt different things, but everybody in the network can still get the benefit, right? That's what puts Synergy in a very unique place.
And back to the value of Synergy, the providers that perform the clearing or the settlements or the CSDs, they're fundamental in that and connecting to them and allowing that data flow back and forth from the infrastructure providers and the utilities is critical. And like
absolutely.
The hopes today, you lose transparency on the life cycle.